Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to be literary detectives, and we're cracking open the very first page of one of the most influential books in human history. Let's get into it.
So you open it up, and what's the first thing you see? A genealogy, a long list of begats, right? I mean, most of us just skip right over that part. It feels so boring. But what if I told you this isn't just a list? What if this is a meticulously crafted code, a master plan designed by the author to prove a mind-blowing point from the very first word?
Okay, so to understand what the author is up to, we have to know what he was writing. He was writing a gospel, and that word literally means good news. He wasn't just writing a biography, he was making an argument. He had some very specific, very good news he wanted to deliver, and he was going to do it in the most persuasive way he could. So let's put on our detective hats. We're going to treat this family tree not as a history lesson, but as a code that the author, Matthew, absolutely wants us to crack.
Now, for you and me, a list of who begat who is, well, it's a bit of a snooze. But you have to understand, for the first century Jewish reader, this was like a high-stakes legal document. Genealogies proved everything: your right to land, your claim to property, even your legitimacy for the priesthood. This wasn't just family trivia, this was serious business.
And right away, we find our first huge clue. The author actually stops and tells us, hey, pay attention. I've organized this whole thing into 3 sections of 14 generations. Now, that's not random. That's a deliberate mathematical structure. So the question is, why? What's so special about that pattern? Well, when you look closer, this 3x14 structure is basically a super condensed history of Israel. The first 14 names, that's the nation's epic rise, from its founding father Abraham to its greatest king David. The second 14, that's the golden age, the decline, and the tragic fall into exile. And that final 14, that's the long, silent wait for the promised Messiah. It's a roadmap, and the author is pointing us to a very specific destination. So, why 14? What is it about that number? Well, one of the most compelling theories has to do with something called gematria. In ancient Hebrew, letters also had numerical values. And if you take the name of the most important king in this lineage, David, what do you get? Daled, which is 4, plus Vav, which is 6, plus Daled, another 4, it adds up to 14. He is literally stamping David's name, David's royal authority, all over this genealogy. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. So, just when we think we've cracked the code, a perfect, orderly, royal line based on the number 14, the author throws us a massive curveball. He includes 4 women in the list. Now, that was already really unusual, but it's who these women are that's the real plot twist. These aren't just any women. These are figures from some of the most scandalous stories in the entire Old Testament. Okay, get this. First up is Tamar. Not only was she a Canaanite, a total outsider, but she secured her place in this line by posing as a prostitute to trick her own father-in-law. Yeah, you heard that right. This is not the kind of story you normally highlight in a prestigious family tree. This is a skeleton you leave in the closet.
And he's just getting warmed up. Next up, Rahab. She was a foreigner from the enemy city of Jericho, and her actual profession was a prostitute. And yet, here she is, placed front and center in the ancestry of the Messiah. It's an unbelievably bold move by the author.
Then we get to Ruth. She was a Moabitess. Now, according to Jewish law in the book of Deuteronomy, people from her nation were explicitly, legally forbidden from ever becoming part of God's people. But here she is, not just included, but celebrated as the great-grandmother of King David himself. The author is intentionally showing us that God's plan doesn't follow our rules.
And the final one is maybe the most shocking of all. The author doesn't even use her name, Bathsheba. He calls her the wife of Uriah. He forces the reader to remember King David's lowest moment, the adultery, the deception, the murder. Instead of hiding the royal family's biggest scandal, he puts a giant spotlight right on it for everyone to see. So why on earth would he do this? Why include all these controversial figures? Well, scholars have a few ideas. It shows that God's plan has room for messy people, for sinners. It shows that the good news isn't just for Jews, but for outsiders, for Gentiles too. But maybe the biggest reason is to get us ready for what's coming next. It's like he's saying, if you think these stories are surprising, you haven't seen anything yet. And all of this, the structure, the numbers, the scandals, it all builds to the chapter's climax. After laying out this incredible legal and historical case, the author completely pivots to tell a supernatural origin story.
the story shifts to Joseph's point of view. I mean, can you imagine? He finds out his fiancée is pregnant, and he knows the baby isn't his. He's a righteous man, so the law gives him every right to expose her to public shame. But his compassion wins out, and he decides to end things quietly to protect her. And right at that moment, an angel shows up in a dream and changes absolutely everything.
And the angel's message is the whole point of this entire chapter. Joseph is told to go through with the marriage, legally adopting this child into the royal line of David, and he's given the name Jesus. In Hebrew, that's Yeshua, which is directly connected to the Hebrew word for to save. His whole purpose, his whole mission, is baked right into his name.
But this carefully built opening chapter also leaves us with some really big, unresolved questions. It's like a few case files are still sitting open on the detective's desk, and scholars are still debating them today. And here is the biggest one, the one that makes everyone scratch their heads. If Matthew's genealogy is so precise, so intentional, why does the Gospel of Luke give a totally different list of names from King David all the way down to Joseph? On the surface, it looks like a major contradiction.
But when you put them side by side, you realize they have completely different goals. See, Matthew is writing for a Jewish audience. He traces the line forward from Abraham through the royal line of King Solomon to prove that Jesus is the promised Jewish king. Luke, on the other hand, is writing for everyone. He traces the line backward, past Abraham all the way to Adam, the father of all humanity, showing that Jesus is for the whole world.
So how do we explain the different names? The theories are fascinating. Some say one is Mary's line, the other is Joseph's. Another really popular idea is that Matthew gives us the legal line, the official succession to the throne, while Luke gives us the actual biological bloodline. But you know what? The truth is, there's no single answer everyone agrees on. It's still one of the great historical puzzles of these ancient texts.
And this whole puzzle actually brings us back to the author's master plan. The point of these genealogies wasn't perfect, modern-style record-keeping. The point was to build a powerful theological case. Both Matthew and Luke were using the tools of ancient genealogy, shaping them, structuring them, to build an argument for their specific audience. Think of it less like a birth certificate and more like a lawyer's closing argument.
And that really leaves us with one last big question. If an author put this much strategic thought, this much symbolism, and this much argument into a list of names that most of us just skip, what other hidden structures, what other brilliant arguments are just waiting to be discovered in the rest of the book? Kind of changes how you read it, doesn't it?